We'll bring him in, and Allie, if you would stay with us for just a minute, we're gonna we'll let him know that he's coming in.
Sure.
Tell him.
Deans, do you want
Hi, Mark.
pictures taken? Pardon me.
Welcome. Hello, Valerie.
Mark is my friend.
Who's saying that?
Don Angelo.
Hey, oh, hey, where are you?
I'm in Chicago today, celebrating my birthday. It's my birthday weekend.
Oh,
Happy
how
birthday.
old are you?
Oh,
This is the
45.
biggest smile we've gotten out of Don Angelo all day, by the way. So,
Oh, I adore him. But how old are you? Because in my neighborhood, we would give birthday punches. One punch.
There we
I
go.
grew up in Queens. One punch for every year. How old are you?
45.
It would be 45 punches and then a pinch to grow an inch.
so Mark, we're just finishing Allie Pleiter, who is a
Oh, I
writer.
apologize.
No, it's okay. She's just finishing. She's president of NSA Illinois.
Oh, cool.
She told us how she has sold 1.6 million books. And I am going to catch up to her in 1.5,995. Yeah. So
your mouth to God's ears, Kevin.
that was a great workshop. Thank you very much, Allie. It was terrific.
That's
Be aware,
amazing.
people, of kind of know how they think. So the transition we're making now is to Mark. And Mark is one of my best friends. I heard him once on a seminar, and then I went to a workshop that was online. So that's the extent of our knowledge of one another.
Right.
But I'll take
Kevin
anybody.
doesn't
as a
have many
best friend.
friends, obviously.
And but what I want you to do now, as we interview him, I'm going to ask him a few questions. Connor will ask him a few questions, and then you're going to ask him some questions. So I call this my Larry King live interview, and so Larry King is a famous interviewer. Usually when I talk about Larry King, I have to tell 30% of the audience who Larry King is. So he is a famous interviewer, he interviews famous people. He's in his 90s. He's still doing it on some Russian TV station. He's been married 8 times, twice to the same woman. So listening is very important to him at work, not apparently at home.
Right.
So we're going to interview him, and he doesn't know we're going to ask him. All we said was we're going to just interview you. So he doesn't know anything about what we're going to interview him. But I want you to pay attention to how he thinks. That's the most important part. And Cindy, you can take a picture of us if you'd like. Do you want to do that now? Cindy asked if she could take a picture of us.
Sure.
Yes.
We should all look good,
'Cause
smile.
Our marketing department is fearless or awesome about getting things out. So everybody
Let
look,
us know when. Give us 1, 2, 3.
look at the camera.
Wait.
Look at the camera.
Together. Get it together, Catherine. Connor, are you staring off into space? All right, here we go.
That's
1,
his best side.
2, 3. Let me see it.
Thank you. Okay.
Good. That's the best
Cool.
picture I've taken.
So Mark,
Awesome. Yes.
what was your business plan long ago when you started? What was your business? What did it look like? And what has it become today?
Let's see. And no one's ever asked me that question. So let's see. So I began in this business. I was the director of, speaking of Allie and her 1.6 million copies, I was the director of the 3rd largest book wholesaler in the world. And so what we would do is we'd buy millions of dollars worth of books from Random House and Simon Schuster and so forth. And then we'd sell them to independent bookstores and Borders and Amazon and things like that. And I helped sell over $1 billion worth of books. But after a while, I saw that the middleman was going away. And my business was essentially a middleman business, even though like this was like 2001 or 2002. I saw the middleman was less important, that they more just a functionary, that they weren't really adding as much value as we used to. So what I did was I quit that business, and I essentially, in doing that business and selling $1 billion worth of books on the phone, it was phone sales it wasn't cold calling or whatnot. It was to clients that we built up. So I had to look at a book and very, very quickly understand what its main sales points were, what was interesting about it, should it be selling, should it not be selling, what was happening in the world that would influence its sales or not, including both politically, but like, let's say it was early December. I remember this very clearly, and this is going to answer your question. I remember this very clearly. This was years ago. There was a book called Animalia that had come out from Abrams Publishing, and it was a huge phenomenon. It was a picture book that, like, A is for apple or something. No, they were each animals. Anyway, it was this beautiful illuminated manuscript looking type of thing. And I called up all my clients, this was in December, saying, oh, I have copies of Animalia. Do you need any? And they'd say, I have 500 copies here. And the next one, I have 800 copies in the store. Like, they were laughing me off. So I called Abrams, the publisher, and I said, do you have any Animalia left? And they said, no. And I said, when are you getting it back? And they said, well, it's being printed in China. And so it has to be put on a boat and it has to clear customs. So it'll probably be back like first or second week of January. So I instantly called everyone who had turned me down. And I said, I have 15,000 copies of Animalia left. Abrams is out until after Christmas. How many do you need? And they'd say, oh my God, give me 1,200. You know what I mean? Like, it was that kind of a thing. So it was whatever the edge, the angle was, and how to talk about it quickly to people. So I took that ability to size up how to speak about things very quickly and entertainingly, pitching. And what I had been doing to sell books, I started to do to people's businesses. I would just look at their business and I'd say, you know, Kevin, I looked at your business as if it was a book. I would look at your business, right? And he had an ah of recognition there, Kevin. You had an aha, you had a visible aha right there. I was stopping to let you speak, but that was just an aha you were having. All right.
They call it a recognition spasm. That's what they call it. They call it a recognition spasm.
Right. So I looked at people's businesses and I said, Allie has written this book. Cindy has written this book. It's your business. Like, whether you had a book, and I'd say, what's the main idea of this quote unquote book that you've written? What are the ancillary ideas, the satellite ideas? What are the stories you tell? And what are the lessons from those stories, whether you recognize them as the lessons or not? And what happens if we took an ancillary idea and we put it to the fore and we rearranged what your book was about, or took a lesson from, or combined two ideas that you hadn't combined together and brought that to the fore, something like that? Would it be a better selling book? So that's what I just started doing. I would just started looking at them as people's, as if they were books. Okay. And so I became this differentiation expert, this differentiation specialist. And I coached people on how to differentiate their business and talk about their business in elevator speeches and so forth. And then I would coach them on how to write books and things of that nature. And so then you said, what was my plan? I've never really had a plan. So I want to know where to go with this. Where do you want me to take this?
Well, you call your company is Levy Innovation.
Levy.
Levy Innovation, right?
Yes.
Levy Innovation. So what does that mean? For someone who's looking at you and wondering if they should hire you or wondering what you do for a living?
Oh, yeah. Probably if I were to do it again, I probably wouldn't call my business Levy Innovation, but I started this business in 2001. And back then I wasn't exactly sure what it was I do for a living didn't really exist. And it certainly didn't exist in a big way, like differentiation for individuals and things of that nature. You could argue that the concept existed, but like most people were not doing, there was not like a guy to do that. It was something you did as part of your marketing or so. There was no specialist in that, or if there were very few. So I called myself Levy Innovation. You have to think back to like 2001 or so. Back then, I just saw myself as a creative guy. I actually, some of you may know Don Angelo, I think knows. So I have a background as a magician, and I co-created on TripAdvisor right now, it is the highest rated live show in New York City. It's run for 20 years. It's rated higher than even Hamilton. There's no show higher rated than mine in New York City. It's called Chamber Magic. It's a magic show. Chamber Magic, a demonstration of modern conjuring. Our clients have been people, you know, like the royal family of Saudi Arabia, Stephen Sondheim, just like you know, what's his name from Omaha, Warren Buffett, people like that, you know. So it's run forever. So I co-created both the brand of that and also from scratch, and also the tricks themselves, right? And so I was always super interested, as many magicians are, with, we look at reality as very malleable. We don't look at reality as terribly fixed, because, you know, you might just see this, you know, as a glass, but a magician will say, oh, it's a glass with a recessed bottom. I could hide a coin there. Or, oh, there's a liquid in it. What kind of liquid's in it? What are the properties of the liquid or so? Or like when a magician meets someone, we're always taking in traits of people, you know, like Connor, you know, I would be noticing if you were right-handed or left-handed, or things of that nature. That's just what magician, or where you were sitting, or so. If I could get a reflection off the coffee you were drinking, like let's say it was hot coffee, and if you pass something over it, like, oh, I could see a reflection in, if there was a card there, I could see the reflection of the card as you passed me a card. So magicians are always looking, we're not daunted by design tasks. We just look at them as design parameters. Like if you said to me something remarkable, like I want you to predict the headline in tomorrow's New York Times or something, I wouldn't go, oh my God, are you insane? How could I do that? I'd say, okay, where's the prediction going to be? How is it on paper? Is it verbal? Is it going to be locked in a safe? Who's surrounding the safe? In other words, these things just become design parameters. So I tend to, when I look at people's businesses and I ask them what it is they want to see achieved, I mean that I always have to up the game. Like I always have to push them, because we magicians are used to doing seemingly impossible things. And often people will ask me, they'll have goals that to me, they're kind of like sellout goals. They're too low. They're too low. And it actually, the higher the goal, the more impossible the goal, the more exciting and the more it activates my mind into, I remember I was dealing with the CEO of a division of SanDisk. And she was a client of mine, wonderful woman. And she wanted me to help her. There was this big trade show at the Javits Center in New York City, and they were taking out this big booth, and they were going to be surrounded by their competitors or whatnot. And she wanted me to help create traffic in that booth. And so I said to her, what's your goal for the show? And she said, I don't know, maybe get like 2,000 people to come in the booth. And I said, 2,000 people, that's too low for me to even start thinking about it. And I said, what, right, why don't we go? I mean, I guess you'd hand out flyers that say, come to our booth to get 2,000 people. And I said, why don't we go for show domination? And she said, I like that. And we ended up with, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was over 20,000 people for a 3-day show. And we actually had the figures. In other words, it's not me making something up. We had the figures. And it's because, you know, you can reach your goal, but if it's a 2,000 person goal or a 20,000 person goal, like you have to pull upon different parts about who you are or who the world is. So you might as well go for the larger thing, you know, because it will fire people up. Go ahead.
So earlier this year, I think the COVID has been a great leveler for this business.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's starting from number one. I mean, everybody's business, a lot of speakers' businesses disappeared overnight with COVID. And now they're trying to figure out, how do I get speaking engagements, consulting engagements? How do I reimagine my business? How can I do more writing? All that kind of stuff. And we have people here who are very successful in many areas, both speaking, consulting, and other areas. what is a way to how would you reimagine the speaking, consulting, coaching, maybe even writing business, given the fact that the very, very successful people are sometimes struggling and the people that are brand new are coming into an environment that's very different?
Yeah. I would, so let's see, I'm hesitating because I'm in the middle of doing something with someone else and I'm trying to, like, I haven't thought about talking about this. I don't want to, for like NDA reasons, I don't want to say something that I'm not supposed to be saying. But
You're a magician. You can
right, exactly. And I'm happy to work with people on the call or so and discuss this, because as I'm thinking about it, I don't want to say too much about this thing. But I'm working with someone, and we're creating an event for a very large number of CEOs of major organizations, like a big deal. And we're just in that magician way. We're just trying to tear things apart. So here's something that would be worthwhile saying without me exposing NDA stuff. Again, I find you've always heard that when you need to brainstorm, when you need to come up with new ideas, that all ideas are good. You should just, and I find, because I've led brainstorms for Mad Men on Madison Avenue. That's a gig I used to do. I used to go into ad firms, and I was like the guy who led the brainstorms. And Don Draper would be my client, and I'd say, Don, what's it, and I find that people have a low tolerance for ambiguity in general, that it's like leading brainstorms, unless you're a quote unquote creative, and they have a high tolerance for it. But I find that when I'm working with people, they won't go too far off the normal course of logic, because they think that that's not possible to create something new. So they stay only 1 or 2 degrees right and left from what their pre-existing answers are. And instead that they really need to go super far. So what it is I try to do with people is, let's say I'm leading a brainstorm. I will try to, I call this enforced creativity. I talk about that in my book, Accidental Genius, where you do exercises where, as long as you follow the exercise, you have no option but to create new ideas, right? Because the exercise is so small and precise. And as long as you follow the rule of the exercise, it's not asking you to be creative. It's just asking you to follow this very simple rule. So an example would be, how sometimes in brainstorms, people will say, oh, we need bad ideas. Like, let's come up with bad ideas. That's a form. So that's cool. But the way I do bad ideas is this way. Like, I'll say, okay, we need to come up. If we had good ideas, we would have them out right now and we'd be using them and there'd be no need for this brainstorm. So I'm guessing that we don't really have good ideas. So instead of trying to force you to come up with good ideas, which is something you don't have, and now you're going to feel guilty and ashamed that I'm confronting you on something you don't have, why don't we start in a different place? Let's come up with really bad ideas for the thing that we need to brainstorm about. As a matter of fact, not just bad ideas, let's look at different forms of bad. So first, what are ideas about what it is we're trying to do that are just super boring? But I mean so boring they would put you to sleep, like you would throw up. They're so damn boring. Like, what are they? Okay, da-da-da-da. And we would go and do some, and by the way, so this is about speaking, about reimagining speaking. And like, after we do boring, I'd say, okay, what are ideas that we could come up with that are dangerous? But I mean physically dangerous. It's very likely someone would get hurt physically, right? Not metaphorically, but physically, if we did this. What are some of those ideas? And so what are some ideas that would be bad ideas that are like confrontational? like that are overly, like really uncomfortably confrontational. And anyway, we'd go through all these things. People would be throwing out these ideas. And from these bad ideas, often because people relax the muscle that they're trying to control with, I've had it happen many a time. I remember I was working on some kind of Xbox campaign for, and it was some Xbox game for like girls of like 12 or so. And we were doing dangerous ideas. And one dangerous idea we had is, we'll hold a launch party in an abandoned subway station in New York City, one that's sealed up. There's some subway stations that are sealed up. And so we'll have the girls like walk through the tunnel, past the third rail and whatnot. And then we'll take crowbars and whatnot and sledgehammers and break through the wall. And then they'll walk past the mole people there and what. And anyway, in going over this stuff, they actually came up with the idea for the Xbox campaign. It was obviously, well, we can't do that. And I don't even remember what the idea was, but we can do this instead. Because they were relaxed. They were thinking, they were laughing. I find, and Don Angelo backed me up on this, right? Because he and I have hung out a couple of times, that I'm always trying to be funny, like at all times. And that's just how I like to look at life. But I also find that when you're having fun, you are taking in more of the world. You're relaxed, you're happy, you're seeing more things, you're seeing things as more malleable. When people are too buttoned up and professional, that's when you come up with very ordinary ideas, because they will not move off from who they normally are. So it is kind of essential that when we're working together that we're laughing. It's almost, it's a technique, yeah.
I'm going to ask him one more question, then we're going to have our audience ask you questions.
Sure.
And so they can get their questions ready. When you were
Before you ask me a question though,
yeah.
what's your background?
Mine?
Yeah, you're like in a cave or something.
Oh, I am at a rustic resort in northern Minnesota in the storage closet for the popcorn machine. So
Are you really?
I am. Yeah, I'm on vacation with my kids, and we picked this place, and it has, the online reviews said it has good food, but there are dead bugs in the rooms, and it's really old. And it is really old. They give you a fly swatter when you finish. They do, truly. And we haven't gone to the food because there's too many people around, so we're cooking our own food. So.
All right, God.
Is Mike Pence there?
What's that?
Is Mike Pence there?
Oh, yes.
Nice water.
So Mark, I'm going to ask you one more question. What did you want to be when you were a little kid?
Great question. And I mean, I'm going to give you I started doing magic when I was 4 years old.
Oh, really?
And so, yeah, my father, I was born in 1962. So in like 66 or 67, my dad took me to this deli in Flushing, Queens, where I grew up. And it was one of these like ornate delis back then. And so the waiters would have these white linen jackets. Yeah. If people remember, like white linen pants, nothing fancy, like this is the stuff you ball up and like throw in the washing machine or something like that. So they were wearing these linen jackets or so. And one of the waiters, I still remember, he was bald. He had hair around the sides. He was bald and he had glasses. And he asked me if I want to see a magic trick, and I'd never seen a magic trick in person. And he took a cube of sugar, because back then they had sugar cubes. He probably unwrapped it from the paper, and he said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Mark." And he took his pencil from behind his ear. He had a pencil stub, and he wrote M for Mark on the sugar. And then he dropped the sugar into my glass of water, and he had me hold my hand over the water, above the water. And then he had me lift my hand up, and the M was now on my hand, that had been on the sugar cube. And I just remember I was so shocked by that ever since then, I've always loved magic. But by the way, if I can, to be instructive, it's interesting, that trick. And I don't know if I've ever said this to anyone before about, so thank you for this question, is that a very big part of the work I do, whether it's magic, whether it's working with organizations, whether it's working with individuals, with thought leaders, on their speaking or whatever it is. I'm super interactive. Like, so the show Chamber Magic, which has run for 20 years, it's got like 10 or 12 tricks in it. And there's something like 80 or 90 interactions with the audience in like 90 minutes. It's like insane. Every single trick has multiple interactions in it. And if you, and Kevin, you've seen me speak, even if I'm doing a keynote, I've done keynote in front of 1,500 people, I'm interacting with the audience, but I don't mean in like some faux way. Like I'm talking and I'll say, what's your, you look smart. What do you think when I talk about differentiation? And can you hear me? It says my internet connection is.
You're good.
You're fine.
Yeah. Like I'll do stuff like that. I'll say, you look smart when I say, differentiation. What is it you think I mean? And like over there, I want you, like a very, very interactive. And
that started in that deli.
In that deli, but along those lines,
Yeah.
a magician, a wonderful magician named Michael Amar. So he was at least 6 times voted Magician of the Year at the Magic Castle in Hollywood. So maybe more. So Michael, when he was younger, he actually went around to old age homes. And he would actually ask, he was doing some research, and he asked people if they'd ever seen a magician live before. And if they did, he then asked them, do you remember any tricks that they did? And he said overwhelmingly, so these were older people, 80, 90 years old or so, and the only tricks they would have remembered if they saw a magician live were tricks that actually happened to them. Mm. In other words, they didn't so much remember the magician taking a silk and folding it up and having a dove appear out of it. What they would remember is like a coin vanished from their hand, right, or a card that they had signed like appeared in a sealed wallet and he gave them the coin back. So it was stuff that happened to them. So as much as possible, when I'm working with people, either from the stage or one-on-one or whatever it is, I'm always trying to look for ways of making something happening to them so they can say, this happened to me.
Nice.
In situations, always this happened to me. When I did the show, hold it. I'm about to say one more very profound thing.
Go ahead.
Withdraw your hand. You had that, withdraw it. When Steve Cohen and I first 20 years ago, I love you, man. When Steve Cohen and I first did Chamber Magic 20 years ago, we co-created the show, but Steve's the performer. So Steve would perform the tricks and I would go into the audience, not formally, just informally. And I'd walk up to people like one at a time. And every performance, I'd go up to like 4 or 5 different people. And I'd say, oh, hey, I'm with the show. I'm really interested. What trick did you like? And I would listen to hear what the trick was that they liked. And the tricks that they didn't talk about, we pulled out of the show. It was Darwinian. It was survival of the fittest, because we knew that the tricks needed to act as emissaries, as missionaries for the show. We didn't have a lot of money, so the tricks were going to have to do the talking for us. So not only did they have to talk about the tricks, but they had to be able to talk about the tricks. And what that means, Di Vernon, who was a famous magician in the 20th century, he said, confusion is not magic. That if the audience is confused, they may be fooled, but they won't be astonished. The confusion will stand between them and astonishment. And so with us, what that meant was they not only had to love a trick, but in speaking to me, they had to be able to talk about it. And if the trick was too complicated, they may have loved it, but they couldn't, like they'd stumble talking to me. But this is key for all of you. Like I would ask them, what's the stuff you like best? And if they stumbled in talking to me about it over and over again, I'd go back to Steve and say, either we have to pull that trick out or we have to make it so simple that they can talk about it, because they're our marketers. Wow. If they can't talk about, right? And so that's how the show's run for 20 years, higher rated than even Hamilton, because all the tricks are talked about and all the tricks can be talked about because they're that simple.
I love this. Okay.
Mark, you've actually reiterated a couple of points we've spoken about already this morning. One is the need for consistent interaction. Second, Kevin was talking about consistently understanding who your audience is. So it's great to hear those points. But your website says positioning for consultants and other thought leaders. And this is one of the challenges that people new to the business have got, is how do they actually position themselves? What kind of questions? I know reading your website, this is a 2-week summary and action process for you normally. But what kind of questions should our Speaker Academy personnel be asking themselves to position themselves and differentiate themselves?
Oh yeah, beautiful question. So thank you for that, Connor. So I'm trying to give you a good answer. I have many answers, so I'm trying to give you a real. So the interesting thing, you need to look at differentiation this way. So I'll just say something that's from my keynote, right? I'll just go into a piece of my keynote because this actually. So you, me, and everyone, you're becoming defensive, Connor. You're holding your defensive body. I'm a magician, right? I want you to go like spread out, like stay that way until I'm finished. All right. No, you don't have. Right. So you, me, and everyone we know walk down the street all day long, making snap judgments about every single thing we see based on almost no information and no deliberation. We walk down the street and we say, oh my God, you see that guy over there? He's so skinny, I bet you he's sick. Or look at that woman over there. She looks like a genius. But that woman in back there, she looks like a moron. Now you can say that we shouldn't make judgments like this, that they're specious, they're wrong-headed, no deliberation, that if we knew the people in their context better, we can even make 180-degree different judgments, right? The opposite based on what, but nevertheless, you, me, and everyone we know make judgments like that all day long, and we probably always will. Know that the marketplace is making similar kinds of judgments about you and your business. They're looking about who you are and what you do, and they're very, very quickly, that's the key to what I'm saying here, super fast, they're very quickly making a judgment of, oh, this is cool, I need to find out more about this person, or there's nothing much to see here, I need to move on. So when you take what I call a big, sexy idea, or your differentiation, and you move it to the fore of your business in everything you do, will everyone want to hire you? No, not necessarily. But what it is because you're leading with one of your best ideas, one of the best reasons to hire you, the people who should be hiring you are more likely to want to have a conversation with you. So a point that I'm making right now, based on what your question was, Connor, is this idea of what your differentiation is, needs to hit people so fast. It's a foot in the door. It needs to hit people so fast. They're not going to deliberate about it. They're not going to carefully weigh things. Most people don't do that. You might occasionally run into some people who do that. But in general, like this stuff happens in a snap. So whatever it is that you do, it has to be so simple that it just, 2 days ago, one of my clients, who speaks a little, but he's more a coach, he called me and he said, this guy, Mark, also named, right? I'm Mark and his name's Mark. And he called me and he said, Mark, he said, the stuff you teach works. And I said, I know it works. Why do you say that? And he said, I just got 2 $100,000 clients, and like each one paying over 6 figures. And I said, how'd you go about doing that? That's awesome. And he said, it's because the message that I was telling was so complex that people seemed to be getting it, but I wasn't quite sure. But it was also making my business complex because my business was trying to support this complex idea. When you heard me talk about it, you said, well, here's the thing that it's all about. Like it's blah, blah, and I overly simplified it. I call it Dr. Seussing it. I Dr. Seussed it. I said, no, here's what your thing really is about. And he said, and so that's what I've been using. And I even changed my business about it. It's like, oh, well, here's the problem you're having. Well, here's why you're having the problem, like in a sentence. And here's what we're going to do about it. And we're going to solve it in the next 4 months. We're going to solve it. And like they both said, sure, you know, and is that making, let's see. So Connor, you said ideas about differentiating. And so I'm saying people need to understand it or think they understand it in a snap. It shouldn't be something that they deliberate about. It's got to be super simple for them so that they can understand it and think about it and talk about it. But another thing is the idea of, if you really want to stand out, see, differentiation, or Connor?
I'm being stubborn now, okay?
All right, I'm getting ready for it.
This is me saying I'm interested. Honest to God, it is. Go on.
All right, good, excellent. All right, your hat would be crossed too if it could.
Somebody else question?
Right. No. Let me say one other thing.
Finishing? Okay. We've got about 15 minutes left.
Oh my God, I want to keep going, man. I didn't know.
I know.
Yeah,
We'll have you back.
No, you guys are great. So the idea of, if you really want to position or differentiate, if you think about what those words mean, positioning and differentiation, it's always against something else. It's never in a vacuum. It's never on its own. If you were the only one in a field, you'd have no reason to position or to differentiate because you'd be the only one. So it's always against something else, whether you like to think that way or not. That's what positioning is. And because some people say, oh, I don't want to be competitive or whatnot. Unfortunately, in the marketplace of ideas, you need to be competitive. Like you have no option. So, so with positioning, one thing you can do, this is an exercise that I give people, I call it the stereotypes exercise. It's, imagine that someone is coming to see you and they want to hear about what it is you speak about or your business or so. Now, they don't know your work exactly. They don't know it. Like they know your name and like maybe you speak on this topic, you know, diversity or innovation. That's it. They don't know anything else about you. But nevertheless, they probably have worked with other speakers or heard other speakers. They have ideas, they have stereotypes about what someone in your field is going to talk about. They don't know for a fact that you're going to talk about these things, but it's like, oh, you talk about innovation? I know what this guy's going to talk about. And so like, what are all the stereotypes? What are the ideas? What are the stories? What are the things he thinks you're going to talk about? And then once you list those, the second half of the idea is differences. It's that he thinks I'm going to talk about these things, and I may talk about some of them, right? The same way I do. I have some stereotypical ideas. You know, I may talk about those things, but what are the ideas, the insights, the stories, the exercises? What are the things that I talk about or can talk about that he doesn't expect? And so to differentiate, you can often find one of those differences and you elevate it to the fore, and that becomes your overarching differentiation. But even if you don't find one overarching big sexy idea, you know what to focus on. Because if people think they know what you're going to say, they have no reason to listen to you. So it is essential that you pepper what you're doing with surprise. Otherwise, they'll turn away. Anyway.
Anybody else? Questions? Who's got a question? This is your opportunity.
Stunned into silence.
Right.
Here we go. Allie.
Up, Allie.
Right. For those of us who can't hire expensive consultants, what are some of the questions we need to be asking ourselves to start thinking about differentiating? I mean, what's the differentiation 101 that either as we've got a career or as we're thinking about starting a career, what kinds of questions should we be asking ourselves as we figure out how to be different?
Yeah, no, great question. Great question. So sometimes the first thing I'll say, so I'll give you some questions. Oh, and by the way, I hadn't thought about this. If you want to, at the end, I have a document called 33 Questions to Business Differentiation, which I can send you guys if you want, you know, just for free. I hadn't even
I swear
thought.
I didn't know that and tee that up for you, I promise.
Right. But, you know, I'm happy to. One of the, when I think about that document now, one of the questions in it, this is one of my favorite questions. It's what can the people who you work with, let's say in your audience, or if you're coaching them or consulting them, what can they do after working with you that they couldn't do before working with you? That's what, you know, like what's something that you're leaving them with, or that they'll be able to develop once you go. Because what differentiation is and positioning is, it's less about the impact that you have, and it's more about the impact that they're going to have in their own lives, even if they forgot who you were. Like the impact that they're going to have in their jobs, or with their spouses, or their families, or the communities. It's like, what's the impact they're going to have? And if you differentiate around the impact that they're going to have, rather than the impact you're having on them, that's almost always a way to create a big, sexy idea. Another way to ask yourself, another question to ask yourself about differentiation. Again, what I'm trying to do is I try to get people off the normal ways of thinking, because if the normal ways of thinking were working for them to differentiate, there's no reason we'd be speaking. So I try to, I call myself the human inner ear infection. I'm like, I try to get them like disoriented and, you know, like, oh my God, you know, so I'm always asking them questions that they didn't expect. And so one question, which I think I got from Fritz Perls, you know, the therapist from the 60s, right? Gestalt therapy. I think this is where it came from. But I invariably ask them, what about your work is obvious? Like that it's so obvious that you don't even think about it because it's just so silly. And when people start talking to me about what's obvious, it like invariably they just do it in a sing-song way about really ordinary stuff. But so often as they're talking about obvious things about their work, they go, I never thought about this before, but because obvious makes it seem like, oh yeah, it's the stuff I always talk about. It's not. Obvious, you know, it's almost like putting you outside yourself. Does that make sense? So it's about asking yourself questions. What's obvious? What's surprising? What can people do after working with me that they couldn't do before working with me? And another thing that I would have you do is to look at stories from having worked with people, because often when we're trying to pin stuff down to an idea, we over intellectualize. But I find that when we think in story, like that allows us to meander a bit more, and that allows us to find something much more meaningful then. So like stories about people who I've spoken to, stories about people who I've coached, stories about consultants or so, you know what I mean? That's almost always stories about why this work is important to me. Story, right? Like that's just, you know, stories. I'm just, what is it that you speak on, Ali? And I'll say this something.
I speak with creative productivity, and I do something called the chunky method. And I've always known that the chunky method was a concept that people latched onto right away, but you're the first person to explain why. And I can't, that word chunky is so instantly recognizable, is that you take something and work it down into chunks. So thank you for that. That's a huge aha moment for me.
Oh, wow. So you've already had this huge aha moment of, yeah. So I love that. So congratulations on that.
We got time for about one more question.
Oh, okay.
Amy has had her hand up for quite some time.
Amy.
Thank you, Mark. Good to see you again.
Oh, hey, Amy. I didn't even see you there.
Hi.
You were
Yeah.
off.
How do you take something that is abstract and turn it into what you call differentiable, people can relate? So for example, in my case, after people work with me, it depends on who it is. Someone realized they can stop micromanaging their people. So half of their team decide to stay instead of leaving. That was huge for them. Another situation, the leaders realize that they don't have to be the one that strong and be bold. They can actually be the water supporting their people. You don't know what I do yet. I paint on water. So the tagline I used to use is making impossible possible. And I could teach your people how to do that. And my newer one is making invisible visible, because if we can't see it, we don't get it. But that seems to be very abstract. For people who want to look for something different, they actually search me out and find me. But that's very, very small percentage.
So what's your question?
How do I make it more broad and relatable to everyone?
Right. So, so thank you for that. And so you said you paint on water, right? That's cool. I like that. As a magician, right? That would be like an allied art to magic. So you answered your own question there when you said relatable to everyone. So the interesting thing is it's an old saw in advertising and in marketing, and it's this: the more physical something is, the more you have to differentiate it based on something like ideas. Like if it's a car, you know, if you can wrap your hand against it and it makes noise or so, then you have to talk about freedom and, you know, like stuff like that, because other people can just drive their cars up next to yours and say, oh, mine is X horsepower. Well, mine's Y horsepower. It's more. You lose. So you have to be about like these gossamer-like ideas if it's something that's really hard. But if it's something that's more ephemeral, you have to make it as tangible as you possibly can. So when you say relatable, the first thing that comes to mind is I would get people to understand how ideas, something that seems not physical, how ideas really have influenced the physical world. And so I'd make the parallel between, you know, I don't know, you know, like independence, or I don't know, I'm just making stuff up.
Right.
I would find like stories about people and ideas that have made a big impact in the world, ideas that you originally couldn't touch, you know, that they weren't physical. And I would talk about, you know, yes, they were just ideas, but they helped create the computer. They helped create America. They helped create this. And then I would say, in the same way, we're going to be working on this idea, which people are going to be able to carry away, and it'll help them do this better and that better. Does that mean I'm trying to make what it is that you do physical by applying it to something that the audience already knows? What's a situation where it was just an idea, but the idea produced physical changes in the world? And so you bring those up as illustrative of the power of what you're doing. Am I making sense at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A little bit. I'm going to digest it more. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
So now Mark is going to be quiet. The only thing he can say is thank you if he wants to. But we're going to tell him, what did we like, learn, or appreciate? So take yourself off mute. We'd like to get as many of you as possible to tell him, what effect did he have on you? What did you like, learn, or appreciate? And you can tell him directly.
Hi, Mark. I'm Cindy Chosick, and I speak on, well, I help people connect the dots to their mental wellness by speaking about anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideations. What you helped me with was when you said, let me look at my notes here. You said, bring the best part of your presentation or what you offer to the forefront, because it's such a sensitive topic and so emotional for people. You know, it's kind of one of those things I've always stepped slowly into and then, you know, hit them at the end. And you totally clarified and helped me make sense of what I should start with to attract people and really start dialing it in with the bigger gives that I give. So thank you so much. I think it's going to be really powerful in my video series to just go for the jugular, I guess.
That's right. Thank you.
Somebody else? Yeah, Barbara.
Well, Mark, I really appreciate your big vision, and you gave me, I've always been a person that's had kind of a bigger than life vision and these kind of bigger than life goals. And I just, I feel like I'm working alone right now. And sometimes it feels like to me that my big vision seems silly to other people. And you actually just hearing you talk about your vision and how you really like to empower people to think big and like, don't make it so small. And that's really encouraging for me. And I really appreciate you being that way. And it's actually giving me a lot of courage to embrace that part about me. Thank you.
That's great.
Somebody else? Yeah, Mike.
What I really liked and appreciated was your comment about magic tricks and points. The people most remember are the ones which involve them. I've always had a tendency to tell good stories and good jokes, but they're always intellectually centered on myself from my experience.
Oh, wow.
And remember to hit their experiences hard is important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Somebody else? Yeah, Amy? And then Mary?
Thank you, Mark. I learned about how you can watch people's reflection from a coffee cup.
Yeah.
That is huge.
Mary?
Well, I was utterly fascinated by your speech. I think that you are an individual that really empowers people, because so many of the things that I heard you say, like the question, what did you what did you want to be when you were a little kid? Because my field is addiction and drug use. And I have really struggled with how I could have the interaction with the audience, because a lot of the information that I would say would probably just go flat. But this is such an important message to get across. And it also brought new meaning to what we say in the field of addiction and alcoholism. You can't keep it unless you give it away. Yeah. And my study of human behavior has always been, is this individual an empowering individual? Are they just one that's going to suck the energy out of you? And to be really empowering, you really empowered me in my field. And thank you for that gift.
Somebody else, one or two more.
I want to say that it is a pleasure to see your beautiful face this morning. Completely unexpected.
Right. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Valerie. You're on mute.
I want to thank you for all the great ideas. I took a lot of notes this morning. One thing that I got out of it is, what about your work is so obvious? Because sometimes, I think that's just really easy. But but thinking about it, that's probably the most unique thing about our work, and we overlook it.
Beautiful.
Mark, I really want to thank you for what you've done for us today. You've really expanded our thinking. This is the very first of 6 sessions. We couldn't have gotten a better one. I hear that there's a magic show for magicians only in Las Vegas every year. And one of my friends who goes every year said, we all know how the trick works, but what we do is we give standing ovations because of how they did the trick. And he said, we are amazed at, oh, look what he did with that. Look what she did with that. He said, we know how to do the trick. That's right. But we love to see, and that's why I invited you, and Connor and I agreed that you'd be the guy to kind of tell us pull the curtain back. How should we be thinking about this? So God bless you, Mark. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Everybody else stick around. Mark, you can Go
If I
ahead.
can just make
if you
one
want.
point.
Thank you very much.
If I make one point, if you don't mind, what I learned was that I'm getting very defensive about doing this now in the future. So the other thing, though, I'll talk about what do we appreciate from Mark. I genuinely appreciate that you've taken time out of what is a very busy schedule to give time to people here who are eventually going to take business from us. I mean, this isn't a good business. But thank you, Mark. It's been really insightful, and we look forward to taking the 33 questions. If you can send that to us, we'd really appreciate that.
If you just give me your emails or something, I send them all out individually. So I'll just send in the next day or so. I'll send them all out. If you, Kevin,
so are you happy to, if we just send you a list of all the people participating in this, that you want to send it out, or do you want to give it to one of us and we can send it out?
Yeah, send it to me. Send it to one.
I'll send it to you then, Kevin. Okay, cool.
Good.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
get it to everybody. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you all
Well,
so
thank you, Mark. Everybody else stay here.
Brilliant.
you
Thanks,
all.
Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye.
I'll turn it over to Connor.
Okay, so if we can just go back to the class of students again, if you don't mind. Valerie, thanks for popping in, and Paula, thanks for popping in as well. We've got another great speaker next week. You're more than welcome to join us again. So, right, I suppose it's any thoughts on this session, what you want to see improved, and then we'll figure out how we'll give you some homework, clarify that. But any thoughts on what we've done, what you've seen today?
This is the audience participation part of the program.
Lack of participation, depending.
Yeah.
I feel more, I guess, more informed and more prepared with diving deeper into the practices I already have.
Good.
So between Allie, being reminded of the additional steps of that, I'm not a math person, the equation to get clear on my goals and deadlines. And then with Mark, flipping the script of the videos and starting with the best first instead of leaving it for last.
Okay, good stuff. Any other thoughts?
Thank you guys for putting this together. And my hunch was right. This is no brainer. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. All right. Okay. Any final ones before we go to the homework? Right. I'll send you out a note on this, but basically what I've taken down as homework is that, or things we're going to do, I'll send out a letter of agreement to everyone, a standard kind of a one. And I'll also look at the NSA website. I think they've got some standard letters of agreement as well. I can download those and send them off to you. A contact sheet to all the group. But once you get the email, you'll see what each contact reference is. Homework for you for next week. We're going to ask you the question. We will ask the question. What example did you see of good interaction or good exercise on Zoom in the last week? Is that clear? Yeah. Okay. All right. The other thing then is we'll also send you out Mark's notes, whatever they are. The other thing we will do is if you would go to on topic development on your academic book, on page 3 of topic development, there's an exercise on choosing your topic. Choosing your topic on page 3. I would like you to spend some time on that and fill the grid in there. We can use that as the basis for conversation next week. So that's basically the homework, I think, for next week. I'll send it out to you in a note anyway as well.
So that is, Connor, that topic development is section 3 of the book, of the binder.
That's section 3, yeah, module 3, topic development, page 3. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay. And of course, you've got to read chapters 1, 2, and 3 of the book as well. All right, Kevin, do you have any final thoughts?
I just want to thank everybody for, when I woke up this morning, I thought, man, 4 hours, what's that going to be like? And it felt like 15 minutes. So I want to thank you, Connor. You're the expert. Cindy, you preceded me for a couple of years. Amy, you have come back. Thank you very much. And Allie, it was terrific. It was just great. This is exactly what I needed for sure to kind of take my business and give it a little bit of a supercharge. So
Well, and with
thank
both
all-
of you, I gain more knowledge and inspiration than I expected being the fourth time around. So Amy's right. It's a no-brainer with you two at the helm. So thank you for all the work you're doing.
I won't be with you next week. I'll be, we're on vacation, but we have Lori Guest coming as our special guest from noon to 1. Lori is the alley plighter of booking business. So she knows, she has a system. It works. She's very busy, and she started out just like all of us. She didn't know what to do, and she started building a business. So all of this is about thinking and building the business. And so you're going to like her a lot.
She's fantastic.
Connor, you're terrific today. Thank you for being here, and thanks for.
Yeah, you good, sir. Enjoy the rest of your holiday and make use of that fly swatter up there, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Stay healthy, everyone. Great to see everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Safe.